Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to work on the tooltip for our inventory. This is going to be pretty simple, should not take us very long to do. I'm going to go to Canvas real quick. I'm going to create the actual tooltip UI element. I'll create an image, and I will call it tooltip. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to add a text element to the tooltip. So I'm going to keep it at text. And then on tooltip, what I'm going to do, going to add a content fitter. Now what this will do is it will size this, when we set it up correctly, it will size this tooltip image to match the content inside of it, which will be the text. Because we don't know how much data is going to be stored inside of this image. So what we want is we want to be able to set the horizontal size, because we want the horizontal part to be something that we set and the vertical part to be something that the content decides how tall it should be. So what I'll do is I'll set the horizontal or the vertical to a preferred size. And notice that we can no longer edit the height of that element, but I'm going to change the width to something like 150. That'd be a bit closer to what we want. Notice that it's collapsed down to nothing because it doesn't really know what it's working with. So if I go to add component, we're going to add another element here. It's going to be the horizontal layout group. And we're going to use this to also add a padding to our text. I'm going to add 7, about maybe 8 or so. Looks about right. Looks good. So I want to go to the actual image now, and I want to add a sprite. Let's see. Button square would work for me. I want to take this and we could actually make it a little bit transparent. And darken it a bit. And I'll just make the text, for now, just make it white. We'll change that all in the code. We'll use some style tags to change how the actual text is rendered, the color and stuff. But for now, that'll work. So now I'll start writing the tooltip class. I'm going to create a C# script. I'm going to call it tooltip. So I'm going to get rid of this stuff. Let's go ahead and lay out this class how we think it should work. So I know we need a way to activate the tooltip and a way to deactivate the tooltip. Not necessarily deactivate the game object and stuff like that, but just a way to tell the tooltip class, this object, hey, we want to use the tooltip now, and then tell it when we don't want to use it. So something like if we hover over an item in the inventory, we know we want to activate the tooltip. When we remove the mouse, the cursor from that item, we want to deactivate the tooltip. So we know we'll need that, so we'll do just a simple public void, don't return anything, and I'll call it activate, and then we'll have a deactivate as well. I want to apologize if you hear any background noise. My puppy is in here, because if he's anywhere else, he'll just whine for hours and hours and hours. We have activate and deactivate. Now, we need a way to... So what the tooltip's going to be, right? It's going to be a way to display a string of information, of data. And that information is going to be from our item. So we need a way to build a string based on the item data. And we can do that by just simply having one string and then concatenating all the information and styling it using the rich text tags. We can do that. So I'll do a public void, call it construct data string. It'll need reference to an item, so it'll need to know what the item data is working with is. Make an item, and activate as a result will take an item argument, and I will set item for this class here to be, for this instance of this class, to be item that we passed activate. Construct data string will have the item information we need. And as a result, I'll also need a way to store that string. So I'll do a private string. Private string, we'll call it data. And so now data, just to see what's happening, we'll do a data equals item.title. So now the tooltip should have information to display just the title. That's good enough for now. On activate, what we're doing is we are assigning the item. But then I also want to activate the actual tooltip object. So we need a reference to that. Be game object, and I'll call it tooltip. So now in start, we will grab a reference tooltip is equal to GameObject dot find, and that will find one by the name of tooltip. So now on activate, we'll set tooltip set active is true, and that's going to activate it. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the under tooltip here. See this little thing right here activates and deactivates it. That'll handle doing that for us. And what I want to do is I want to, at the start, at game load, I want it to be deactivated. So I don't want to be able to see it. I don't want it to be rendered at game load. But if I do that, then I cannot find it with the GameObject.find because it's not active. It doesn't search through non-active items, obviously. So what I will do is, instead of doing that in the UI, after I found it, I'll just set it to be false. Set active to false. Just like that. So on activate, we are setting the item, and then we're also activating the actual object. But one thing I want to do is, if we do that, we'll have to also construct the actual string. So I want to take the item we had and pass it to the construct data string, build out a string for us, which there's nothing there but a title right now, but it's just for an example, and then activate it. Cool. So let's see what we have going on now. What I want to do is I want to go to the item data, because we need to have an event for whenever we mouse over an item. We need to fire the activate event on the tooltip. So for that, we'll need another interface implemented. Would be iPointer enter, and also one for exit. So we need to know when to stop activate or when to deactivate the tooltip. So quick actions, implement interface, just like that. Here to this. So on trigger enter, what I want to do is I want to call the activate method. So let's go to up here, and we're going to grab a reference to the actual tooltip. So I'll call it tooltip, and that's equal to tooltip. Now I want tooltip to be on the inventory object. So tooltip is on inventory, so I can use the inventory object we're grabbing there to do a tooltip is equal to inventory.getComponent and grab tooltip. Just like that. So now tooltip is equal to the tooltip component on inventory. Cool. So on enter, tooltip.activate. It needs so activate requires an argument. We know that it needs an item, which we happen to have on the item data, obviously. So we'll just pass it the item just like that. So on exit, we want to do the same thing, but deactivate. Now we don't have that method set up to do anything yet, but it will momentarily. So I want to see what's going on now when I play. Hover over an item. Nothing happens. There's an error. It's not finding the... Oh, I deactivated it accidentally. There we go. Hover. And now we have new text. It pops up. You can see it down there, but it doesn't follow the mouse or anything. It is just statically on the screen. So you could have a tooltip like that where you hover over an item and it'll pop up next to the inventory. There's a lot of games and systems that use that type of tooltip. But I like them when they follow the mouse, so I can just move around and read while I'm looking at the items as well. So that's like that, pretty cool. But I want it to, when I move off the item, I want it to go away, and I also want it to follow the mouse. So let's do that stuff now. So once you go over the item, it activates it. When you go off the item, we want to deactivate it. So do a tooltip dot set active to false. All right, now we need an update method so we can make it follow the cursor. It's going to be a void update. Now, while this item is active, we want to set its position to be equal to the mouse position, just as an example. So I will do if we're going to check to see if the item is active or the object is active. To do that, I would do something like if tooltip dot, I think it's dot active. Let's see, active self gives us the local active state. And active is deprecated. So get active self. So if tooltip is active, we want to set its position to be equal to mouse position. Simple enough. I will do transform.position is equal to input.mouse position. Pretty rough way to handle this, but we'll see what it does. Hover. Doesn't do anything. Oh, I set this transform.position. I meant to set the tooltip.transform.position. No problem. Hover. Alright, so it's working, but I mean it's following the mouse. But you can see an obvious problem, right? It's activating and deactivating very quickly. And the reason that's happening is because we are setting it to activate it whenever we hover over it, and then we're setting it to deactivate it when we're no longer on it. And what happens is when we activate it, the tooltip pops up under the mouse, blocks the raycast, so it's no longer hitting the actual item, so it thinks we hovered off of it. So now it's like, oh, he's off of it, so we can deactivate it. Now that he's deactivated, we're hitting the item again, so show it again. And now it's just doing that over and over extremely fast. So the way to fix that is we don't need the tooltip to ever intersect a raycast. It's not interactable, we don't care. Now, if you had the static style tooltip where you hover over an item and it pops up over there, you may have interactions in that tooltip. You may have buttons to click or something, and that might be a reason to do that type of system. But for this, all I'm going to do is on tooltip, I'm going to add a canvas group, and I'm just going to say it's not interactive and it does not block raycasts. Simple as that. And there you have it. Now you'll notice it is set to be the very center of the tooltip. A way we can fix that in the actual editor is if we go over to the pivot point and we set it to be X on the 0, I believe. Yeah, so it's going to bring it to the very left side of the object. And on the Y, we would set it to 1, yeah. So it's a 0 to 1 value, but I want it to be offset some, so what we can do is we can mess with that a bit. We could do like a negative 0.1. And now we're offset a bit. I mean, you could do that, no problem. So let's make sure we set that whenever we stop playing. And 0, not 0, 1. Good stuff. So let's go ahead and build out the tooltip real quick. So item.title will be the first thing. Now I want to color this title whenever we draw this. So a way I can do that is I can pass a color tag here. So I'm going to concatenate a color tag in front of this. It's going to be colors equal to something. As an example, we can use black. And then in the color tag, just basic formatting tags here, pretty much HTML, familiar with that. Just going to do some markup real quick. And see what that does. Those in there. Value is never used. Oh, that's right. Its value is never used. We're not actually putting the data information into the string for the text on the tooltip. So to do that, what I'll do is I know text is a child of the tooltip. So I'll do tooltip.transform.getChild. It's the one and only child, so it's 0. And it is a component called text. And looks like I'll need the actual UI namespace to use that. So I'll do using, you can do engine.ui. That'll give us the text type there. And I'll do text of that component is equal to data. Cool stuff. So now, cool. So there's a reference script missing. Don't think there was anything there. But I don't want that to be black. So for now, we'll just make it, actually, let's go to, so what I have here is I have a window from Photoshop opened up, and I'm going to use this to pick out some colors real quick. The title, I mean, none of this really matters. I'm just going to do a couple things and then let you go at it. It's going to be a blue. And then we're going to add a new line there, maybe a couple because the next thing is description. So we'll do a new line and we'll concatenate the description on there. So it'll be item.description. And then we'll add some tags there to end that. So I want to add color to this as well. Or no, it can remain white. That's fine. And one thing I want to do, though, is I want to actually make the title bold. It's inside. Should have a bit more of a tooltip. And we do. I mean, it's ugly. The colors are just awful, but you understand how it works, which that's the whole point. So just to give you an example of how to do stats and stuff, I would just add another new line, and I would add item.power, and you could do something like after the new line, do power is equal to this, and then you could have all the values in there. All you want, just add them in there just like that. And if you have different types of items, so you have different types of items that extend the item class, and you just build out, say, consumables don't have power and stuff like that, and weapons don't have armor values. So you have extended versions of items. So what you can do is set up different versions of tooltips as well, depending on the type of item. So you would have a string that would build out based on the type of item it is. So if this was a consumable item, you wouldn't have power, you would have like effect or something like that, and only have effect, not have power and defense and stuff like that. So you can handle that way. Also, we have a rarity value on our items. You could use that to change the color of the title, like you would see in a lot of RPGs, a lot of MMOs have colorized indicators depending on the item value or the item rarity. So you could do that no problem, because the information is just a simple value in the item database. So that's how you do that. I'll fill this out in my spare time because you understand now how to do it. Just do it how you would want yours to look now, because mine's going to be different than yours, I'm sure. So it's a very simple thing to do. Now you have the great stick. It's a stick that's pretty great. Power 56. And that's all there is to that. Now, one thing I wanted to mention was, off camera, I changed something that was a simple error that was throwing the child transform error. So you may have gotten that a couple times. I think it was in slot. The problem that was happening was, this is checking to see if the item doesn't exist, and if it doesn't, it adds an item there when we drop it. But what was happening was, if we would drag an item from let me just show you. If we would drag an item from a slot and then put it right back in that slot is not empty. So it throws a child error because there's no child in that slot. As an example, if I were to drag from this slot, there's no physical object now in this slot, but the backend still thinks there's an item data object there. So what I do, if I were to drop on that, it would look for a child in that object. And there's not one there because we have it in our hand. We remove the parent we move the parent to be the inventory object and not the slot object. So to fix that, notice it throws an error, transform child out of bounds. To fix that, all I did was check to see if I'm dropping it in the same slot I picked it up from. So if I'm dropping it, if dropped slot is not equal to the ID of the current slot, that means I'm not dropping it in the slot that it was in. So if I'm not doing that, do the swap. But if I am, just put it back to where it was, which would be handled in drag. Just put it right back to where it was. The slot did not change. So there's that. Also, I fixed one thing that was mentioned in the comments. It's in inventory. So what's happening here is I'm adding 6 items. And you would notice that now I have 6 swords. But beforehand I was adding 6 items and I only had 5 swords. And the way I fixed that was, what's happening is, if it's a stackable item and we don't have one already, we add one like we would add any other item. But we're not adding the amount to be 1 when we do that. The amount is still 0. So after we already have one in the inventory, it goes back through and it's like, there's already one there, and we're going to increase the amount by 1, but the amount was 0. So instead of having 6, we have 5, and that's how you get that. So what I did was I just did a simple item data amount is equal to 1 when we add it, just like any other item. So all items now have an amount of 1. If they're stackable, the amount goes up for each item. Problem fixed. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Austin, and I will see you next time.